Hello, and welcome to BKAT Presents. Joining me on today's episode is Executive Director Jake Galanders with Empact Northwest. Jake, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. What I'd like to do first is really just hear about the organization, what it is you do.
Sure. So Empact Northwest is a 501c3 nonprofit based in Kingston, Washington. And we are primarily a disaster response and preparedness organization. So traditionally, our areas of focus have been in technical rescue. Most of our members are either current or retired firefighters, police officers, EMTs, emergency medical personnel, that sort of thing. And so traditionally, our big focus has been on responding to natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, typhoons, and hurricanes, with a specific focus on technical rescue and providing care for those who are still trapped. In addition to that, we have pretty robust medical and logistics capabilities to support that mission. And then we also do a lot of firefighter training here at home in basic technical rescue, and we work with communities to help them be prepared for disasters. That's sort of our core mission in 10 seconds.
I like it. It's a good elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So you are located here in Kitsap County, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're based in Kingston.
And your organization started in 2010-ish in response to Haiti, is that correct?
It sure did, yeah. So in 2010, the big earthquake in Haiti, there were several of us firefighters who were struggling to find a good way to get down there and serve, and just couldn't find a good pathway, so we created our own. And 10 years later, we're still at it.
That's fantastic. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the story of your inception.
Yeah, it's a great story. So essentially, well, like I said, we were all trying to find ways to volunteer to go to Haiti. And all of us in the beginning were actually paramedics, not firefighters. Most of us in that initial group were firefighters as well, but not all. And we were trying to find a way to get down there. We had reached out, each of us individually had reached out to multiple other nonprofits that were sending teams down. And we found that nobody really understood what role a paramedic could and should serve in that environment. A lot of people were looking at us more as orderlies rather than as, well-trained medical professionals with an expertise in providing care in exactly that environment. So a lot of us were really struggling with that, really frustrated by that experience. And enough of us knew each other that we sort of formed together into initially a group of about 8 people. And we put together that first mission. And then people started hearing about us, particularly in the emergency medical industry. And so we started getting more interest from other people who wanted to go. And in that first year, we sent over 350 providers to Haiti and did a lot of primary care as well as acute care in the immediate aftermath, and basically set up a small clinic in the city of Port-au-Prince serving the population. It was a great experience. It was we learned a lot in that first year. We made some mistakes, but we learned a lot of really valuable lessons and built a foundation for where we are today.
I bet that's sort of a crash course in how to run your nonprofit.
Yeah, it was a pretty sharp learning curve, to say the least.
I'm sure. And what have things looked like in the past 10 years?
Oh boy, we have grown leaps and bounds from 8 people and no budget to we're sitting on 50 members right now, a staff of 4, all part-time, but still a staff of 4. And we've expanded beyond that initial emergency medical mission into, like I said earlier, technical rescue and urban search and rescue. We're now the only nonprofit urban search and rescue task force in the United States. We're one of the only ones in the world. So it's sort of night and day from where we were. 6 paramedics or 8 paramedics in blue jeans trying to figure out how to get to Port-au-Prince to being a fully established nonprofit organization.
Absolutely, that's a lot of growing and learning.
It's been a great experience, and we've had a great team to sort of navigate those waters and get us to where we are today.
So I know the reason that I reached out to you, I was fascinated to learn about the pivot you've had to make as a nonprofit. Previously you're engaged internationally in disaster and assistance. And now we've got this international pandemic and it hits pretty close to home. So what has that pivot looked like for you?
It was a challenge, to say the least, but it was an important challenge, and it was important to us that we embrace that challenge. We do, like you mentioned, do a lot of international work. We also do a lot of domestic work, particularly in the Southeast U.S. for hurricane season and in response to those. We have not done much work here at home other than training. We have not done much response work here. We were involved in the Oso landslide, but that's really been our only major disaster deployment within the Pacific Northwest. So when this came up, it was very, very important that we would be able to serve locally as much as we serve the rest of the region, the country, and the world. Obviously, there wasn't a rescue problem to address, but one of the really important founding values of our organization is that there's no work that we're not willing to do if the community needs it. So whatever the community needs, we will figure out a way to serve. And so in the past, that's looked like building homes, digging latrines, whatever a community needed in the moment, we've done that work. And this just seemed like one more example of that. It may not be the work we usually do, but as I mentioned earlier, we have a really robust logistics division. And so they were well situated to manage the movement of people and equipment and food and that sort of stuff. So while it was not at first blush, it didn't look like a great fit, it turned out that it was actually a really good fit for us. So we're just proud and pleased we're able to provide a service.
Absolutely. What has that looked like specifically within Kitsap County?
Yeah, so what we're doing is emergency food drops. And basically the way it works is a family in need, whether they're in need because of financial hardship rather, or because they're sheltered in place, which is sort of how this originally got started. We would send out volunteers who would basically go and pick up a list of staple foods or fresh produce and deliver it to that person. It's been interesting to watch. A lot of our work now has been redirected from sort of that initial COVID response, as far as people being stuck at home because of the shelter-in-place order, to people who are maybe not stuck at home, but have a new financial hardship because of COVID. And so it's our target audience has shifted, but we've actually seen it grow at the same time. So that's what we do. Sorry, that was a very roundabout answer.
No, not at all. I followed really well, because the vulnerable populations, the definition of that has really shifted a few times since the pandemic began.
And that's a great way to put it, right? Is in the initial, when we first started this program, our vulnerable population was elderly folks who couldn't go out because of the health risks. And so we were doing a lot of deliveries in that way. And initially, we were having a lot of people who wanted to give us money and just have us do the shopping for them. They didn't have a financial need, just they didn't want to expose themselves, understandably. And now, like you mentioned, the vulnerability has really shifted away from that health vulnerability to an economic vulnerability, where we're seeing a lot of folks who were employed before COVID and have lost their job or been temporarily laid off or lost hours because of COVID. And it's put them in a real tough financial position.
Absolutely. What has the volunteer response looked like, and how has coordinating with other organizations within the county gone for you?
The volunteer piece has been amazing. I cannot speak enough about the generosity of the people of Kitsap County. We put out a request for volunteers, thinking that we might get a handful. We actually had to stop accepting volunteers at one point because we were so flooded with interest, and we just couldn't process the background checks fast enough. So people were signing up and then sitting in a queue for a week without hearing from us and losing interest. So it's been overwhelming. I believe we've had 150 responses, roughly, people interested in volunteering. Of those, we've been able to successfully onboard 74 of them. So we have 74 community members who are giving up hours of their days every day to serve people that they've never met before, with no reward or gain for themselves. It's been really overwhelming how generous the people of this county have been. Working with other organizations has been equally great. We've partnered with several organizations in this response, whether it's the Bainbridge Community Foundation, Kitsap Community Foundation, Gateway Church in Paulsbo, the city of Paulsbo, and everybody is really pulling out all the stops to come together and surround the vulnerable people in our community and provide them the assistance they need to get through this. It's really been a fantastic experience, above and beyond what I expected.
It's really good to hear. I think, honestly, that's the best part, if we can say that, about this entire pandemic, is that when it's needed, people really are able to rally and come together and support each other.
Yeah.
And that is the most reassuring thing to come out of this situation.
Yeah, it's definitely made me feel a little bit better about humanity, watching the way people have responded to this and are helping and serving one another.
Absolutely. What has that shift felt like for you as an organization? I know you're normally doing local trainings and things like that, but having to shift that assistance portion really from an international scope to something more local, really hyper local to you, what has that felt like?
It was hyper local, and it was also a very rapid shift, right? So it wasn't something that we had a lot of time to plan for. It wasn't something that we necessarily saw coming, as far as the need for food delivery and that sort of stuff. So it's been a bit of a hectic shift, and it kind of all happened at sort of the worst possible time, right? Because just like every other business and every other nonprofit, we were hit with the same financial challenges from COVID. We saw an immediate decline in our donations. So we were facing our own financial challenges and trying to figure out how to keep our staff on board. At the same time, making sure that we continued our current programs and projects, and then trying to add another program and project that's not even part of our normal stable. There was a lot of moving parts to make that all happen. Um, I don't think I could have done it without the staff that I have. I've got a lot of really, really dedicated and committed staff and volunteers who really pulled out all the stops. I had volunteers putting in 30, 40-hour weeks to make things work right the first couple weeks. So I don't have a good answer other than it was hard and there was just a lot of work for a couple weeks.
Absolutely. I think that's what really interested me most about your organization is it really showed your nimbleness, that you're normally so focused on, some pretty specific areas of assistance. And then to have to scratch all of that, really the whole house of cards came tumbling down. And then just as you said, to need to keep your own boat afloat and then start helping your community as well. That is a lot of change in a short amount of time.
Well, and one of the other things that we pride our organization on is being flexible and agile. We've intentionally stayed small. 50 sounds like a big volunteer base, but it's comparatively small in kind of the world that we're in. And we've done that intentionally so that we can stay agile, we can stay nimble, and we can quickly pivot our mission to wherever it's needed most.
Well, you proved that in spades for sure.
Thank you.
But what would you say to the community who's looking to get involved or maybe needs assistance?
The best place to get any information about our programs, whether it's as a recipient or to be involved in it, is to go to our website, which is impactnorthwest.org/COVID. And that'll take you directly to our coronavirus response page. It has all the information there. And if they have questions about the rest of the organization, there's lots of easy links to follow and learn more about the other work we do.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today, Jake. We appreciate the inside look at your organization and hearing about what you guys have done internationally previously and the hard work that you're doing locally currently.
Thank you very much, Constance. I appreciated it.